Hey, welcome live with Lynn. So if you're here, say hi. If you're watching the replay, be sure to type replay so I know you were here. I'm Lynn Huber. I want to thank you for being here today. So in the last couple of days, we've been talking about boundaries and how having boundaries in place can help you achieve more happiness and personal satisfaction. And so today, let's talk about some of the backlash you might experience when you're setting good boundaries. You know, one of the things that I get asked about quite a bit is people will ask me, how do I set a boundary or say no without upsetting other people? And the truest answer I can give you is I can't. I really can't. I'm sorry. I know it totally sucks when someone has a temper tantrum over you being yourself or setting a boundary around your time, your attention, or your emotional engagement. And there's nothing you can do to prevent that, or control it. I mean, people are people, and their response is their responsibility. Right? You can only care about yourself. I mean, not care about yourself, but you can only worry about how you react. And so, I hear you though. I mean, when a boundary gets crossed or you feel someone's going to have a negative reaction, it's so incredibly normal to start negotiating your needs in order to calm the other person down. I mean, after all, you're a genuinely loving person, right? I mean, who would want to upset someone if they could help it? But And this is really important to understand. When you betray your boundaries, you betray yourself. It's just you have to look out for yourself. Remember, I said the other day that having boundaries is the highest form of self-care that you can do, because you're saying, I love myself and I respect myself, and this is what I need, right? So you're going to have a time when you start to feel guilty about setting boundaries. I mean, if someone you love wants to borrow money, but yet they've taken advantage of you before or they haven't paid you back before, you might find it really hard to say no, especially if they cry or pout or lay guilt trips or cause a scene about it, right? But try to keep in mind that when you give in to another person's guilt or shame over your decisions, you're basically saying that it's okay for you to live an unhappy life. You're okay living a daily existence where everyone else gets what they want and need, but you don't. So let's look at some ideas to help you navigate that fallout, because there is going to be some fallout. So I have, I think, 10 tips here that can help you navigate that. So number one, don't rob the other person of the opportunity to grow. So, maybe the universe wants this person to learn something from the experience of being told no, right? And maybe by not standing up for your boundaries, you're refusing to participate in the universe's plan. What if by compromising your boundaries, you're not helping either one of you? So what that could look like is, I know I need to set this boundary and leave work on time. My colleagues may have some feelings about that, but their feelings belong to them, not me. And maybe when I stand up for my boundary, I'm giving others permission to do the same. So number two, seriously consider your worst case scenario, right? Your fears might tell you that if you set a boundary that things are not going to go well, that your partner will leave you or your boss will fire you or you'll lose all your clients. Really, seriously, how realistic is that fear? Is that client really going to freak out if you stop answering email after 7 p.m.? Is your boss really going to fire you if you say no on taking on extra projects? Name that worst case scenario of sticking to your boundaries and consider the actual likelihood of, could that really happen? Will that really happen? And so what that can sound like is maybe, it's so scary to tell my mom that I can't discuss politics with her anymore because it upsets me, but it's not super realistic to think saying it will ruin our relationship forever, right? Because it's not, you saying that something isn't working for you isn't going to ruin your relationship forever. Now, there are some people out there that, maybe they shouldn't be in your life in the first place, right? All right, number three, lead with love. So 99 times out of 100, the person who crossed your boundary didn't even know they were doing it. Many times, many of our boundaries are what my friend Karina calls barbed wire boundaries. Basically, if you come too close, you'll get cut, right? While some people are genuinely awful, there really are genuinely awful people. Jim Rohn says there's only 8 or 9 of them in the world. But most of the time, the boundary pusher isn't trying to be a jerk. They just didn't know, right? And so leading with love lets you enforce a boundary without making the other person wrong or bad. So what this sounds like: hey, partner, I know you didn't mean anything when you touched my XYZ body part, but I'm not into that right now. Maybe later. Want to grab some popcorn? See how I just blew that off as lighthearted? Now, if he continues to push that, then that becomes a whole different situation, right? I'm sure not advocating that you let someone take advantage of you or inappropriate or sexual harassment or anything else. But I mean, at first, your very first comment could be something as simple as, I know you didn't mean anything when you touched it, but I'm not into that. Thanks anyway. Let's go get some popcorn, right? Number 4, don't dumb it down. So so we all tend to soften things. You know, for me, a lot of time it's the word but. So I'm going to take a bath, but I'll leave the door open. Or Tuesday isn't great for me, but I could try to make something work. Or I don't really have the time right now, but I know it's important to you. When you're scared to enforce a boundary, it makes sense that you want to soften the message. You want to soften the language, you know. But the fact is, sometimes dumbing it down dumbs down the message. So it can be tough for other people to understand your boundaries when you communicate yourself in a soft, negotiable way. And I even though I do that, I'm guilty of that. I'm a prime example of that because I take things literally. So if someone tells me that, yeah, they're busy, but they want to help me, I'm going to hear the they want to help me part before I hear that they're busy part, right? So basically what this could sound like is, I'm not okay with you showing up at my house unannounced. Please call me ahead if you're interested in getting together. So there you go. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be cruel. Just be positive and state your needs. Number 5, don't give a 1,200 word explanation. So, well, when you say this, I feel that, and I don't really think I should feel that, but I do, and maybe it has something to do with my relationship with my dad, and I need to take responsibility for that piece, but I also think you shouldn't have blah, 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 right? Now, similar to the last tip that I said, when you over-explain your boundary, you make it worse by muddling the message. You're making the message not be clear. So be clear and kind, and then walk away, right? So what this could sound like is, boss, when you volunteered me to work that weekend event without asking me first, it crossed a boundary of mine. Please do not do that again. And it's how you say it. It's your tone of voice. You have to be careful with that tone of voice because you're just being assertive, not aggressive, right? Number 6, do practice in low stakes scenarios. So if you're getting used to setting up boundaries and you're new at it, then don't do something that's going to freak you out unnecessarily. Work up to the scary stuff. So let's start where you feel a little bit more safe. So for example, if you're terrified that your biggest client will fire you if you institute a no meeting on Monday policy, that's not where you want to test your boundaries, right? But practice standing up for yourself with a partner or friend who won't go anywhere if you tell them no occasionally. And so what that could look like is, I want to work up to telling my dad he can't ask me for money anymore, but that's too intense. I think I'll practice standing up for myself by asking for a raise at work since my boss and I have a great relationship. So number 7, teach other people how to treat you. So most people will not have a complete meltdown or think any less of you if you stand up for your boundaries, right? Most people are good people and most people will understand. But if they do, then remain non-reactive during their tantrum. So you just don't react. Don't gush in, try to make things right or try to calm them down. Just don't react. And if you don't react, they're going to learn that tantrums don't work on you. And eventually they'll stop having these tantrums. You know, bosses, clients, partners, friends, parents, basically they're not humans. We're all kind of like 2-year-olds in a way, right? But if you remain firm, they'll learn that what you say has stakes and consequences. And if you give in, they're going to learn to keep pushing you, just like a 2-year-old. We teach people how to treat us. So what this could sound like, my daughter is slamming all the cabinet doors because I set a boundary with her. It would be so easy to give in right now, but I'm going to stay loving and rooted in my truth instead. Just like when you're dealing with a kid, right? You just let them have their tantrum and you stay out of it. Just kind of back off, let them do what they want to do, right? Okay, number 8, use affirmations. So talk to yourself all the time, preferably in a loving and gentle way. Remind yourself that having boundaries is normal, healthy, and totally okay. Remind yourself that regardless of what the other person's reaction is, it is not your responsibility to own their reaction, and it's not even about you. So what that could look like? Well, my parents kind of freaked out when I told them that I am the one that's going to make this decision. I do feel a little guilty, but you know what? I'm really growing here. I did a positive, brave thing. That sounds a lot better, right? I mean, that's what you're telling yourself, right? Okay, number 9, share the experience with someone who gets it. So, sharing your shame is an important, it's an important piece of building shame resilience, like feeling less crappy about yourself. If we feel shame, sometimes especially like if we stick up for ourselves, if we do the brave work of setting and enforcing a boundary and then share that experience with someone who will validate your feelings, someone who understands and who kind of is in the same wavelength as you, that understands what you're feeling and what you're trying to do here, then that they can validate your feelings, they can celebrate and cheer you on. So what that could sound like, wow, I felt totally weird and icky telling my new client I wouldn't negotiate my rate, but I was so glad I stood up for myself. Have you ever dealt with something like that? So now you're talking to somebody who is in the same wavelength as you, who understands it and gets it and who can have an honest discussion with you, right? Number 10, don't judge your boundaries. Is my boundary reasonable? Am I being too harsh? Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe I should be more flexible. While there is certainly a value in being flexible and in negotiation, if you're struggling with boundaries, you're probably already too flexible and willing to negotiate. So don't second guess yourself. Instead of second guessing what you need, trust that you've set your boundaries and they're right for you at this moment in your life and honor them. You can always think about it later. So what this sounds like, I don't know if it was right or wrong for me to say no to my friend today, but I do know that when he pushed the issue, I really felt annoyed. And that's a big clue that I needed that boundary, which is 100% okay, right? So if you are second guessing yourself, then tell yourself, no, right now I'm going to hold my boundary and then I'll go back and revisit it later. So as giving, heart-centered people who genuinely want to make the world a better place, it makes sense that boundary issues are going to come up occasionally. And I don't know a single caring person who hasn't had the experience of all that loving energy being taken advantage of. People take advantage of us when we're caring and loving. But remember, someone else's reaction to your boundary is always a reflection of their limitations, not your worth. I'm going to say that again because that's huge. But someone else's reaction to your boundary is always a reflection of their limitations, not your worth. So that's what I have for you today. I want to hear from you. What's worked for you when people push back against your boundaries? What have you done? What are your thoughts? What kind of boundaries do you struggle with? I would love to hear. So please get below and share in the comments. And thanks for being here today. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.